April brings spring, new beginnings, and creepy neighbors who turn your quiet life into a nightmare. Tonight, we're diving into 3 true horror stories about neighbors so unsettling, you'll think twice before borrowing sugar. Stay with me if you dare. In April 2023, Jenna, a 28-year-old graphic designer, moved into a cozy duplex in Austin, Texas. Her neighbor, Mr. Hargrove, was an older man with a wiry frame and a permanent scowl. He'd wave from his porch, but never spoke. One rainy evening, she noticed him staring through her kitchen window as she cooked. She waved back, figuring he was lonely. The next day, she found muddy footprints on her back porch, too big to be hers. That night, a tapping started on her window. She peeked out. Mr. Hargrove, holding a rake, tapping the glass with the handle, his eyes locked on her. She called the cops, but he was gone by the time they arrived. A week later, a note slipped under her door. "I like watching you." She moved out by month's end. In April 2021, Carlos, a 34-year-old teacher in Portland, Oregon, lived in a quiet apartment building. His neighbor, Lisa, was a cheerful woman in her 40s who baked cookies and left them at his door. One April morning, he caught her peering through his mail slot as he ate breakfast. She smiled and waved, claiming she was checking for packages. But it kept happening. Every day at 7 a.m., her eye at the slot. One night, he heard rustling outside. He looked out to see Lisa digging through his trash, muttering about finding secrets. He installed a camera, which caught her trying his locked door handle at midnight. He reported her. She claimed it was a misunderstanding. The cookies stopped, but he still feels her gaze. In April 2024, Sarah, a 22-year-old student in Raleigh, North Carolina, rented a house near campus. Her neighbor, Tom, a middle-aged man with a shaved head, was overly friendly, always offering to mow her lawn or fix her fence. One April evening, she noticed her bedroom curtains moved when she wasn't home. She set up a hidden camera, which recorded Tom inside her room, holding her diary, reading aloud. He left a flower on her pillow. Terrified, she confronted him. He laughed, saying, "Just keeping an eye on you." She called the police, who found a ladder from his yard leaning against her house. He was arrested, but Sarah still hears whispers outside at night. 3 neighbors, 3 true nightmares. Could you handle a watcher next door? Tell me your creepiest neighbor story in the comments. I'm all ears. If these gave you chills, hit like, subscribe, and share for more true horror. Lock your doors this April. You're not as alone as you think. April nights bring longer shadows and quiet streets, perfect for the creepiest tales. Tonight, we're exploring 3 true horror stories from night shift workers who face terrors after dark. Stay with me, if you can handle the night. In April 2022, Tara, a 29-year-old nurse in Chicago, worked the night shift at a small hospital. One foggy April night, she noticed a patient in room 12 staring at her through the window as she passed by. He was discharged the next day, but that night, she heard footsteps in the empty hall. She checked, nobody. The next shift, a note was taped to her locker. "I'm still watching." She quit 2 weeks later after seeing a figure in the fog outside, matching the patient's build. In April 2020, Mike, a 35-year-old security guard in Denver, patrolled a deserted office building. One April evening, his radio crackled with static, then a voice whispered, "You're not alone." He brushed it off as interference. But at 2 a.m., his cameras showed a shadow moving through the lobby. No one was scheduled. The next night, he found a cold coffee cup on his desk, untouched, with a note. "Next time, say hi." He quit after spotting the shadow again, standing by the exit. In April 2023, Lena, a 26-year-old gas station clerk in Phoenix, worked the graveyard shift. One April night, a man in a hood bought a soda and left without a word. The next shift, she found a photo of herself behind the counter taped to the register, taken that night. She called her manager, who installed cameras. They caught the man lurking outside at 3 a.m., peering through the glass. He vanished when police arrived, but Lena still hears tapping on the windows months later. 3 night shifts, 3 true nightmares. Could you survive a watcher in the dark? Tell me your scariest night shift story in the comments. I'm listening. If these sent shivers down your spine, like, subscribe, and share for more true horror. Stay safe on those late nights this April. you're not as alone as you think. April brings fresh starts and new roommates, but sometimes those new faces hide dark secrets. Tonight, we're uncovering 3 true horror stories about scary roommates that turned homes into nightmares. Stick around if you're brave enough. In April 2022, Emily, a 24-year-old student in Boston, moved in with a roommate named Paul, a quiet guy in his 30s with a shaved head. He kept to himself, mostly staying in his room. One April night, she woke to whispers from his room. She ignored it, but the next day, she found a sketch of her sleeping on her desk, drawn in detail. She confronted him. He smiled and said, "Just practicing." She moved out after finding a hidden camera in her lamp. In April 2020, Jake, a 30-year-old writer in Seattle, shared an apartment with Mara, a woman in her late 20s with long dreadlocks. She was friendly but clingy, always asking where he was. One April evening, he came home to find his desk rearranged, his notes scribbled with her handwriting. She claimed it was a joke, but that night, he heard her pacing outside his door, whispering his name. He locked it, and she pounded until dawn. He broke the lease after she left a locked box with his name carved into it. In April 2023, Sophie, a 27-year-old artist in Atlanta, lived with Liam, a man in his early 30s with a patchy beard. He was helpful at first, cooking dinner. But one April night, she caught him sniffing her clothes in the laundry room. She set up a camera, which recorded him entering her room at night, holding her paintbrushes, muttering about inspiration. She evicted him, but weeks later, a package arrived with her stolen sketches inside. 3 roommates, 3 true terrors. Could you live with a watcher in your own home? Tell me your scariest roommate story in the comments. I'm all ears. If these gave you chills, like, subscribe, and share for more true horror. Keep your doors locked this April. You're not as safe as you think. April rides should be simple, but some Uber drivers turn them into nightmares. Tonight, we're sharing 3 true horror stories from passengers who encountered terror behind the wheel. Stay with me, if you dare to ride. In April 2022, Rachel, a 27-year-old marketing assistant in Los Angeles, booked an Uber late one night. Her driver, Victor, was a middle-aged man with a crooked smile and a thick accent. He asked too many questions: where she lived, her routine. She brushed it off, but halfway home, he took a wrong turn into a dark alley. She demanded to stop. He laughed and said, "We're not there yet." She jumped out at a gas station and later found a photo of her house taped to her front door. In April 2021, Daniel, a 33-year-old engineer in Miami, ordered an Uber after a late meeting. His driver, Elena, a woman with short gray hair, was silent at first, but as they drove, she started muttering about lost souls. At a red light, she locked the doors and stared into the rear view, saying, "You're one of them." He forced the door open and ran, hearing her laugh fade. The next day, his app showed a 5-star review from her account with the message, "See you soon." In April 2023, Aisha, a 25-year-old student in Seattle, took an Uber home from a party. Her driver, Marcus, a young man with a buzz cut, seemed normal until he started playing a recording of her voice saying, "Help me." She froze. She'd never spoken those words. He grinned and said, "I know you." She recorded him on her phone and escaped at the next stop. Police traced the account, but it was deleted, and she still gets unknown calls at night. 3 Uber rides, 3 true horrors. Would you trust your next driver? Tell me your scariest Uber story in the comments. I'm listening. If these gave you chills, like, subscribe, and share for more true horror. Watch your back seat this April. You're not as safe as you think. The air in Willow Creek, Ohio, carried the faint scent of damp earth and blooming lilacs that first week of April 2023. It was a time of renewal, or so Laura Bennett thought as she steered her packed sedan down the narrow main street. At 32, she was starting over after a bitter divorce in Cleveland, her auburn hair tied back in a loose bun, her brown eyes scanning the quaint town with cautious hope. The cottage she'd rented sat on the edge of town, a white clapboard structure with a sagging porch and large windows that promised solitude. The backyard stretched into dense woods, their branches swaying gently in the April breeze. Unpacking her books that first night, she listened to the rain tapping against the panes, a soothing rhythm that lulled her into a fragile sense of peace. But peace didn't last. As she sat by the fireplace, a book open on her lap, a soft thud echoed from the backyard. Her heart skipped, and she rose, peering through the rain-streaked window. Nothing but shadows and wet grass met her gaze. She convinced herself it was a fallen branch, returning to her chair with a forced calm. The next morning, though, a muddy footprint marred her porch, large, too big for her size 7 shoes. Her stomach tightened, but she rationalized it as a neighbor's dog, perhaps a stray from the woods. Willow Creek was safe, she told herself, a postcard town with a diner, a post office, and a church steeple piercing the gray sky. She pushed the unease aside, focusing on her new job at the library starting Monday. By the 5th night, the signs multiplied. A book she'd left on the porch was inside, open to a page about local folklore. A kitchen window she'd locked was ajar, the latch bent. Each time, she blamed the wind or her own distraction, but doubt gnawed at her. That night, as the drizzle thickened, another thud sounded, followed by a rustle in the woods. Grabbing a flashlight, she stepped onto the porch, her breath visible in the cool air. The beam cut through the darkness, landing on a figure, tall and thin, standing just beyond the tree line. It didn't move, its silhouette stark against the misty woods, watching her. Her pulse raced, and she stumbled back inside, slamming the door and turning the lock. The rustling persisted, a constant whisper through the walls, and sleep eluded her as fear took root. Laura tried to shake the image of the figure, attributing it to exhaustion or the isolation of her new home. The next day, she drove to the Willow Creek Library, a brick building with creaking floors and the smell of old paper. Mrs. Carter, the head librarian with silver hair and a warm smile, greeted her, while Tom, a lanky assistant with a nervous laugh, showed her the stacks. They chatted about the town's history, its quiet charm, its occasional oddities, like the woods being unsettling at night. Laura nodded, but her mind replayed the figure's stillness. That evening, back at the cottage, she noticed a new oddity, a small pile of stones arranged in a circle near the porch steps. She hadn't placed them there, and the precision unnerved her. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Opening it, she found no one, just a single white flower, unusual for April's early blooms, laid on the mat. Its petals were pristine, almost too perfect, and she brought it inside, setting it on the table with a mix of curiosity and dread. The next night, the power flickered, plunging the cottage into darkness. A cold draft brushed her neck, though all windows were sealed. Lighting a candle, she moved to the kitchen and froze. On the counter sat a glass of water, filled to the brim, untouched. She hadn't poured it. Her hands trembled as she checked the locks, finding the back door slightly ajar. Outside, the rustling returned, louder, paired with a low hum, like a voice too distant to understand. She called Sheriff Daniels, her voice shaky, but he dismissed it as wildlife or kids, promising a patrol. Sleep that night was a battle. At 2 a.m., a scratching sound jolted her awake. Peering out her bedroom window, she saw the figure again, closer now, its outline sharper under the moonlight. It held a stick, tapping the glass in a slow, deliberate rhythm. She screamed, dropping the flashlight, and the figure vanished into the mist. The next morning, a thin scratch marked the window pane, a silent threat etched into the glass. Laura's resolve weakened, her mind racing with questions she couldn't answer. The library became Laura's sanctuary, but even there, unease followed. Mrs. Carter mentioned an old legend one afternoon, a recluse named Elias Crane who lived in the woods decades ago, obsessed with watching townsfolk. He vanished after a fire consumed his cabin in April, leaving behind whispers of a restless spirit. Tom scoffed, calling it nonsense, but Laura felt a chill. She dug into the library's archives, unearthing yellowed clippings about missing hikers in April, always near her cottage's woods. The pattern was too close to ignore. One day, Mr. Grayson, a gruff farmer with weathered hands, visited the library. He pulled her aside, his voice low. "Watch the woods," he warned. "Elias left gifts, flowers, stones, as markers. Folks say he never left." Laura's blood ran cold. That night, she set up a motion sensor camera facing the backyard, her hands steady despite her fear. The footage arrived at 1 a.m. A tall figure, face obscured by shadow, arranging more stones, then staring directly at the lens before retreating. She replayed it, her breath shallow, the image burning into her mind. The intrusions grew bolder. Her mail was tampered with, letters opened, resealed with a faint, earthy scent. A chair in the living room was turned to face the window, as if someone had sat there watching her sleep. She reported it again, and Sheriff Daniels finally visited, his boots heavy on her floor. They found no footprints, no evidence, just the camera's clip. He suggested changing the locks, but Laura felt the cottage shrinking around her. That night, the hum returned, louder, paired with a shadow passing her bedroom door. She dragged a dresser to barricade it, her hands shaking, the wood scraping against the floor. The presence was inside now, and she knew escape wouldn't be easy. Laura found more gifts in the following days. A carved wooden bird on her porch, its eyes seeming to follow her, and a lock of her hair tied with twine, placed on her pillow. The townsfolk grew evasive, their conversations trailing off when she asked about the woods. Mrs. Carter muttered about a curse, while Tom avoided her gaze. She installed more cameras, noticing the figure appeared during full moons, its visits timed with the lunar cycle. The bird's presence haunted her. She dropped it one night, backing away as the hum grew, a vibration in her bones that she couldn't escape. Determined to end the terror, Laura armed herself with a flashlight and a digital recorder one misty April evening. She stepped into the backyard, calling out, her voice trembling but firm. The rustling stopped, then resumed, closer. The figure emerged from the trees, tall and thin, its face a blur. She activated the recorder and chased it, her flashlight beam bouncing off wet leaves. It led her deeper, then vanished, leaving her breathless. She stumbled upon an old campsite, her scarf tangled in thorns, a page from her journal fluttering in the wind. The recorder crackled with a voice, "You can't hide," a whisper that echoed in her ears as she fled back to the cottage. Isolation began to break her. The figure appeared inside now, its shadow stretching across her walls. One morning, she found mine scrawled in red lipstick on her bathroom mirror, the letters dripping like blood. Her reflection showed a pale, hollow version of herself, eyes wide with fear. Desperate, she sought a psychic in a neighboring town, a frail woman with piercing eyes. Elias Crane claims what he watches. The psychic warned, her voice a rasp. Burn his mark, or he'll never leave. Laura left, the warning looping in her mind, her hands clutching the steering wheel. Her research deepened when she ventured back into the woods, finding a rusted tin buried near the campsite. Inside was Elias Crane's journal, its pages brittle, ink faded. His words chilled her. "I see them all, and they are mine forever." A photo of her cottage fell out, dated April 2023, though she'd only arrived weeks ago. The realization hit. Elias's obsession persisted beyond death, tied to the land. She clutched the journal, her breath shallow, knowing she held the key to her escape. The assaults grew violent. One night, a window shattered, glass spraying across the floor, bloodied handprints smeared on the wall. Laura armed herself with a kitchen knife, barricading the doors and windows with furniture. The hum became a roar, shadows swirling as the figure pounded against the wood. She sat in the corner, knife in hand, her mind a storm of fear and resolve. The cottage trembled, the presence pressing closer, its intent clear. In a final act of defiance, Laura built a fire in the fireplace, the flames licking the logs as she fed Elias's journal into the blaze. The pages curled, blackening, and the room filled with a scream, not hers, but a guttural wail from the shadows. The figure materialized, its form writhing, then dissolving as the last page burned. Silence fell, heavy and final, the cottage still. She waited, knife ready, but the night remained quiet, the terror seemingly ended. Laura survived, but the aftermath lingered. She moved to a new town, leaving the cottage behind, but whispers followed her, soft, insistent, in the dark corners of her new apartment. A shadow flickered once, gone before she could confirm it. Back in Willow Creek, residents reported similar sightings, tying them to April's full moons. Mrs. Carter's voice trembled in a later interview. He comes every April, watching anew, as the moon rose full and red over the woods. Laura's story became a cautionary tale, a thread in the town's dark tapestry. This long journey through terror ends, but the echoes linger. One true story, stretching across April's quiet nights, a reminder that some shadows never fade. Have you felt a presence in your home, a watcher in the dark? Share your story in the comments. I'm here to listen. If this marathon of fear gripped you, like the video, subscribe for more, and share it with those who dare. Stay vigilant this April, lock your doors, and know you might not be as alone as you hope. The night holds its secrets, and sometimes they find you.